Hello, everybody. My name is Kizzy Shantae, and I've decided to make this real quick impromptu video to discuss some recent unearthings of some giants that are being dug up. A friend of mine and I were discussing these giants and where they actually came from. And we all know the story of David and Goliath, the giant that David killed with the slingshot. The question is, who were these giants and where did they come from? Now, before I tell you that, I want to make mention, I know that we've all been taught that Eve was the first to sin by eating the apple in the Garden of Eden. And thus why man is like this. But that's actually not true. The first to sin against God were his angels, whom God called the sons of heaven. So let's go back for a moment and visit the book of Enoch. Now, Enoch was a prophet of the Lord whom God took up to heaven to explain to him what heaven looked like. It says in Genesis chapter 5 and 24, and Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. Now, one thing I want to mention is Enoch has his own testament. However, it's not in our current Bible canon that we have today. The Roman diocese decided that it was unimportant, thus it was not included in the Bible canon that we have today. But if you want to look it up, I use a website called the Apocrypha. It's actually sacredtext.com, and you look up Apocrypha, which means hidden things, and they have all these books of the Bible that were not canonized. So anyway, Enoch is, his testament is there if you want to go back and reread it. But in this testament, God is taking Enoch to heaven, and he's disclosing to him how he created the stars, the moon, the lights. He's with an angel, and the angel is taking him around, showing him everything. And while they're going, they go to a place where these spirits were locked up and they were moaning or in pain. And Enoch asked the angel, "What is this terrible place?" And the angel tells him basically, this is the place of the wayward angels that are bound here. So that when Enoch went back to talk to God, and he asked God who those angels were, God was telling him and showing him first all of his angels and how he created them. And, he was showing him his soldier angels. And he tells him in Enoch chapter 29, verse 3, it says here, verse 3, it says, "And from one out of the order of the angels have turned away with the order that was under him, conceived an impossible thought to place his throne higher than the clouds above the earth, that he might become equal in rank to my power. And I threw him out from the height with his angels, and he was flying in the air continuously above the bottom." So let's stop right there. So God is creating everything. And his sons, which he says are the sons of heaven, at one point I would say that they were first his sons, but became more like a friend, kind of like a homeboy or somebody that you're telling your secrets to. Have you ever had a friend that you told your secrets to? So he's entrusting them and he's telling them, what it is, and one fashions in his heart to be better than God, to take God's glory. Not only did he do it, but he got some of his friends to go along with him. That would be like being on the world's dumbest criminals, because God is showing you his power, but you didn't even think in your mind that you don't even know the magnitude of his power. He could hear you. He heard their thoughts and threw them out. Okay, so you got these angels that become Satan and his gang, and they're floating in the bottomless, in nothingness, because God hasn't finished creating everything. So he goes on doing what he proposed that he would do and starts to create man, Adam and Eve. So here comes his other children, his body children. They're in the garden. Now I want you to understand something, that Adam and Eve were more like children than anything. And yes, they may have grown up, but they didn't know anything. They hadn't been exposed to anything. That would be like us as humans having a baby and telling them not to touch fire or don't touch anything hot. And depending on the age of your child, they may not be old enough to understand why not stick your hand in this fire or why not touch something until they actually do it. And unfortunately, sometimes things have to be learned. As a parent, we can't stand over top of our children all the time. If we did that, we would impede their growth. And the same with God. He couldn't stand over top of them, and he told them don't touch it. He didn't tell them why. I'm not saying that it was his fault. I'm just saying what happened. So here comes the devil to these unsuspecting children. And one more thing I want to point out is the devil could have easily went to Adam first. Okay, he went to the woman because she was the giver of life. She was the embodiment of all the Creator wanted to do with man. So get to her. Okay, I don't know about you, but one thing I have learned is listening to people's stories. Satan chases the chosen. He chases and goes after the ones that he stands to gain the most, or that stands to gain the most from having the word of God. Okay, because I know women and I know the strength of a woman. So much more so a woman that has the word of God. Okay, it wouldn't have been a devil, a bear, a lion that is going to stop this woman if you're messing with her children. So he has to beguile her. He has to go to her because she was the embodiment of all the Creator wanted to do. Okay, so he goes to Eve and has her eat the apple. Now, another thing that has not been taught, which is in the book of Adam and Eve, and this is another canon that has not been placed in our regular Bible. There are two books, Adam and Eve, the first and the second book. But anyway, in the book of Adam and Eve, they felt so bad by what they did in eating that apple that they literally died several times from grief and heartbrokenness, that God had to revive them. Like he had to bring them back to life because they were so heartbroken at what they did. Not only did they just kill over from grief, they tried to kill themselves. And Satan tried to kill them by throwing them off of a mountain. He did not want them to inherit any of these promises of God. Okay, so let's go back to the topic at hand. I just kind of wanted to give you some backstory. Okay, so we're talking about these giants and where they came from. Okay, so after Adam and Eve get it together and they start populating the earth, remember, Satan and his gang is still floating around. So, and in Genesis chapter 6, it says, chapter 6, verse 6, it says, and it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God, the ones that were floating around, Satan and his gang that were kicked out, the sons of God saw the daughters of men, Adam and Eve's children, that they were fair, meaning beautiful, and they took wives of them, all of which they chose. And to take a wife back in those days, that meant they were having sex with them. It says they're having sex with all of whom they chose. Okay. It says, and impiety increased, meaning they were down here clowning, doing everything that they could possibly do. Okay, and then it goes on to say which angels taught what they did when they came down here. So it says, and moreover, Azazel taught men how to make swords and knives, shields, breastplates, the fabrication of mirrors, the workmanship of bracelets and ornaments, the use of paint and beautifying of the eyebrows, the use of stone of every valuable and kind, the sorts of dyes, so that the world became altered. It says, impiety increased, fornication multiplied, and they transgressed and corrupted all their ways. Amzarek taught the sorcery and dividers of roots. Armors taught the solution of sorcery. Barakel taught the observers of the stars. Akebal taught the signs. Tamil taught astronomy. Azradel taught the motion of the moon. And men being destroyed cried out, and their voice reached to heaven. So what that's saying is that they were down here. They came down. They were having sex with the women. They taught them all the sorcery and the different powers that God's things had, because there's power in them. It just is. Okay. And then it goes on to say, there were giants in the earth in those days. And after that, when the sons of God came in unto the women unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. And God saw that wickedness of man was great in the earth, and every imagination and the thoughts of his heart was only evil continuously. So these women started having baby by the angels, thus producing these giant children. You know, these were bodied women. The angels are spirits again. You know, so these kids were huge. They had these giants. Verse 6 says, and it repented the Lord that he had made man on earth, and it grieved him in his heart. God was hurt because here I have given life to these children, and basically Satan has got them. Satan got every one of them. And the only one that made it, the only one that God kept was Noah and his family. You know, this is where the story of Sodom and Gomorrah came from. These were those people and all the stuff that they were doing in the earth then. You know, God couldn't find one. He only had one good person that he could leave his truth and give his word to. You know, these bad spirits had got to all of them. So God killed them. Okay? He killed their worldly body. He killed their physical body, because these are spirits. You know, they're angel spirits. We have spirits that are in us. Okay? So Satan and his gang were able to beguile the whole world then, and thus were killed, but their spirits were not. They were left here to roam the earth. Now, not all of them, because some of them, as Enoch had saw, were tried, the worst ones. God said, no, I'm not letting you guys back out. They were tried and judged then, and their sentence was to be placed under the earth until the real judgment, when they're going into the pit. Okay? So, I want you to really understand and where we're at. So we're up to Noah coming back out, repopulating the earth. Understand that Satan and his gang have not gone anywhere. Their spirits are still here. Okay? So the next video that I do, I'll explain more about where they are and some of the stuff that they have done. But I just want to reiterate that Eve was not the cause of the sin that came into the world. It was those defunct angels who became Satan and his gang. And what they're trying to do is exalt themselves above God. That he wants God's place. Okay? And women, you are more valuable than anything that has been previously taught to you. You are way more than to be used for just sexual deviances. You know, I know that, we run around and we're confident with our bodies, and, we may wear certain revealing clothes, or, you may do stuff for attention or what have you, but that is all false. And that's all been given to us by Satan and his gang. That's not what you were created for. So, I'm going to end there. I just wanted to, kind of let you guys know where those giants came from. And I pray that the word of the Lord is on you. And I pray that you were given a revelation. And thank you for your time. And I hope you have a blessed rest of your day.